Having understood the concept of ecofeminism, in this part of the video, let us talk about the perspective of feminist environmentalism. Veena Agrawal develops this concept of feminist environmentalism and bases the arguments of feminist environmentalism on the political economy of gender and environment. Veena Agrawal's feminist environmentalism basically highlights the interplay of different forms of stratification like that of class, caste, ethnicity, geography within gender that significantly affect women's relationship with nature. Veena Agrawal points out that it is important to highlight, it is important to examine the underlying basis of women's relationship with nature at the levels other than ideological. As I was just pointing out, that it is not ideological position, it is not symbolic position which creates the link, which creates the root for women and for women's relationship with that of nature. Unlike ecofeminism, feminist environmentalism addresses how material realities in which women of different caste, different class are rooted, that might affect women's relationship with that of nature. So therefore, the point to highlight in this theoretical approach, the point to highlight in feminist environmentalism approach is the material conditions, the lived experiences of women which necessarily establish a link between women and that of nature. So let us see some of the fundamental premises of feminist environmentalism. Feminist environmentalism points out that women's relationship with nature, in fact for that matter men's relationship with nature too, needs to be understood as it is rooted in material reality. That our relationship with nature is rooted in material reality, and that is important to understand if you want to understand women's relationship with nature. It is the specific forms of interaction of women with nature that is important in determining this relationship. And what determines that specific relationship with nature? It is the material conditions of women. For example, the poor and tribal women are likely to be affected qualitatively in a different way because of environmental degradation. So therefore, women's relationship with nature in this case emerges or results because of their material proximity, because of their material closeness with nature. Because they are poor and because they are poor women, that establishes, that creates a different kind of relationship with nature which is qualitatively different from that of women belonging to upper class as well as that of men belonging to upper class. So therefore, what mediates the relationship between women and nature here is that of the class position, is that of the ethnic position. So therefore, it is not that all women are close to nature because they share the similar biology. It is the women of particular class, it is the women of particular ethnicity, women of particular geographical locality that they have a specific relationship with nature. The point to understand here is that the way in which poor women share with nature, the way in which poor women associate themselves with nature is not similar to that of the rich women, because the lived experience of poor women is qualitatively different from that of the lived experience of rich women. Perhaps it is the poor woman who has to go to the forest to fetch firewood, it is the poor woman who has to walk to the nearby pond, nearby water body to fetch water, and this lived experience, which is again mediated because of the class position, that is central to understand women's relationship with nature. And feminist environmentalism especially highlights this material connection between women and nature. To understand feminist environmentalism, perhaps we need to understand intersectionality. Intersectionality is an argument within feminism which says that there is a close association between different forms of stratification. That stratification based on gender sometimes is juxtaposed or sometimes overlaps on stratification based on class. So therefore, it is not essential to say that, it is not important to say that society is divided between male and female or society is divided on the basis of gender. Sometimes this division of society based on gender overlaps with division of society based on class, as a result of which we have different kind of lived experience within gender. In other words, this intersectionality creates a distinction between rich women and poor women. It creates a difference between women belonging to the first world societies, the industrial societies, and women belonging to the third world societies. It creates a difference between women belonging to the hills and women belonging to the coastal or the plain areas. So therefore, it is the geography, it is class, it is ethnicity which further creates a difference within women. So therefore, gender doesn't emerge as the only form of stratification which distinguishes men and women. There are other forms of stratification which are layered within themselves, which are intertwined, which overlaps with each other, and that creates a different kind of division of society. And we need to understand this intersectionality to understand feminist environmentalism. Let us take the same example again, that poor and tribal women, they are responsible for fetching fuel and fodder. Even though sometimes we say that it is the woman's responsibility to collect fuel and fodder, it is not all women's responsibility. Hardly we see that women belonging to rich households go to the forest to fetch fuel wood or go to the water body to fetch water. So perhaps it is wrong to identify, or it is wrong to essentialize women's position or women's division of labor, that it is their responsibility to fetch water or to collect fuel wood. It is women belonging to particular class, women belonging to particular caste, or women belonging to particular geographical locations. They are more close to nature, or they have a different kind of relationship with nature compared to women of other classes, women of different geographical backgrounds, or women of different ethnic backgrounds. So therefore, when it becomes the responsibility of the poor woman to fetch water from the water body or to collect fuel wood from the forest, therefore they are likely to be affected more adversely in situations of environmental degradation. So when environmental degradation perhaps affects everyone, it is the women, and again women belonging to poor households, they have to suffer, they have to face a different kind of qualitatively adverse experience. So they have to suffer the most adverse experience because first of all they are women, and secondly they are women belonging to poor households, or they are poor women. So therefore what I am trying to argue is that women's relationship with nature or women's interaction with nature is mediated through their class position, through their ethnic position, or through their location, or through the geography, and which is essentially material in nature. That it is women's position in the material context, it is the women's economic background, or it's women's class position that matters, that determines their relationship with nature. And that is fundamentally what feminist environmentalism argue. And understanding this material link between women and nature, perhaps we may argue that in the course of their interaction with nature, or in the course of their everyday interconnection with nature, women develop specific kind of knowledge about nature and knowledge about its regeneration. So therefore, when we say that women should be a part of nature conservation, women should be a part of nature protection, women should be a part of environmental movement, perhaps the root cause is that women's interaction with nature is because of their material position, and this material position which brings women close to the nature, that results in developing a specific knowledge about the nature. And therefore Vinay Agrawal says that women are both victims of environmental degradation and they are repositories of knowledge about nature, because it is the tribal woman, it is the poor woman who perhaps have to encounter the nature on an everyday basis. They have to interact with the nature on an everyday basis, and this everyday interaction with nature is essentially material, and therefore when there is an environmental degradation, they are qualitatively affected in a different way. They are adversely affected in a different way, which is different from that of men and which is different from that of women belonging to other classes, from that of women belonging to upper classes. And women's closeness with nature again makes them repositories of knowledge about nature. So therefore women possess different kind of knowledge. Women possess specific knowledge about nature, knowledge about herbs, knowledge about medicinal plants, knowledge about conservation of nature. And this knowledge that women possess doesn't emerge because of their symbolic closeness with nature, doesn't accrue from their ideological closeness with nature. That emerges because of their material closeness with nature. And again, what I am trying to say that this material closeness is mediated or this material closeness emerges because of their class position, because of their ethnic position, because of their locational position, and therefore perhaps it is wrong to say that perhaps it is wrong to say that women are close to nature because of certain symbolic positions or because of certain ideological positions. So to summarize feminist environmentalism argument, we may say that in feminist environmentalism, the relationship between women and nature is structured by a given gender class organizations of production and distribution. It is a larger political economy which determines forms of production, forms of distribution that produces a specific gender class nexus, and it is this gender class nexus that is central to understand women's closeness with nature, women's relationship with nature. Ideology may be seen as a part of this structuring. Ideology may be important in understanding this structuring, but it is not everything about women's closeness or women's relationship with nature. Perhaps there is something which is beyond ideology, and we need to understand the material context in which women are positioned to be close with nature. If women go to forest to collect fuel, if women go to water body to fetch water, perhaps they do that not only because they are women, but because they are women of specific households. We need to see the class position of that household. We need to see the ethnic position of that household. We need to see the locational position of that household. And it is this material context, it is this ethnic position, this class position, which perhaps mediates, which perhaps governs women's relationship with nature. In other words, to conclude this part of the video, feminist environmentalism understands women's closeness with nature from that of a material context and from that of lived experience of women, again women belonging to particular caste, class and ethnic position or locational position.